Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is you're watching this. Hmm? Oh, happy Pride Month. Yes, I got my Pride on, my Pride shirt on. So, yes, and it's also Cancer Survivor Month. So, we'll get into that in a few minutes. So, how was your week? Did you do anything fun? We went to Lavender Farm and got some infused lavender honey, raw honey infused with lavender from the lavender farm. So that was fun. Um, and then I had some tea with some friends. Um, I had this one. It was strawberry kiwi, which was real. It was tastes really good. And of course, like I love my teas sweet, so I didn't really have to add any sweetener to it. Because the strawberry kiwi in it made it um, at least sweet enough I could tolerate. I should say without having to add sweetener to it. Um, but yeah, no, it was really good. Anyway, so what are you drinking this morning? I am drinking the Stephen Smith peppermint leaves. So, sorry, Sean. We're out of milk. We need to get some milk so I can go back to my lattes. But yes, I've added organic stevia in here, and I know it sounds weird because it's peppermint. So I did add the infused lavender honey in there. So it tastes really good. You can't, it doesn't take away from the peppermint leaves. So yes. So yeah. Anyways, all right. So yesterday was Cancer Survivor Day. Then they've made it. They start off with June 7th being Cancer Survivor Day, and then they've turned it into Cancer Survivor Month. And I guess it's still kind of in that transition. Um, so, but let's talk about cancer survivorship. A lot of times they are, if people still have, or I guess the definition of it, I feel like has changed over time. Used to be a cancer survivor, you were in remission for 5 years or cancer free for 5 years, and then you were considered a cancer survivor. Now, I think with everything, I feel like a lot of people are that's kind of like blurred, and a lot of people have gone to doing like if you still have cancer or you're living with cancer, you're a cancer thriver instead of a survivor. But um, let's talk about like what that means for you and like how do you get there. Um, I came across this Facebook page. It's called Cancer Ghosted, and it's so interesting things that's posted on there. I mean, honestly, it could even be a bot that posts it on there. I don't even know, but um, I will say, like, what it says is so accurate for a lot of cases that I can't not mention it. So it definitely um, it definitely talks about I know before I've talked about how different people go through this very differently than other people. So a lot of times you either when you're diagnosed with cancer, you either lose all your friends or like all your support, or you have this huge support around you, like huge team of support. Always said, we're here to be either or, you know, we're here to either add to the support or to be that support. And so I came across this posting that said, if I had a broken leg, they'd send flowers. Now that I have cancer, they are giving me space. And it says, some of us don't get anybody that's stayed that's local. So some of us don't, those people that are even local, they don't come visit. A meal train when we are too weak to cook. So we got lucky with my mother, a neighbor across a neighbor in the cul-de-sac. She brought us a meal, I think like every Monday or Tuesday. And I mean, we looked forward to it. It was nice. And then of course my mom's boss was amazing. They had, she set up a whole meal train for people at our work to bring us something every weekend, which was really nice. So, but some people don't get that. Um, some of them don't get someone to quietly sit with us. Because sometimes it's just nice just having somebody there and not feeling alone. I know you can also feel alone when somebody's there too. But depending on your mood and what's going on. But some of us don't get the motivation to get moving through the pain. That's a lot. Depending on what you need, that is very helpful. I was always I was there with my mom, when she was in the hospital, and okay, come on, we need to go take another lap. We need to get you walking, we need to get you moving so you can get out of the hospital, because this is what they want you to be able to do, to be able to check you out. Or even if you're having the pain at home with the cancer, if the cancer is causing the pain, you can have pain from the cancer. If that's causing you pain, having that distraction is always nice, how sometimes with little kids, I remember when I worked on a cruise ship, a little kid, he cut his hand or cut his finger, and the first thing I did, I lifted above his head and I started chatting with him and talked to him about something completely different that was going on the cruise ship, or what he did that day and everything. And he totally forgot that his finger was bleeding while I sat there and I cleaned it off and put a Band-Aid on it, and totally forgot about it. So sometimes just having a distraction is nice and will help people get through the pain. Some people do not get a ride when we need an unexpected procedure. Some people don't have a friend to call and just talk. I lost most of my friends. Most of them who said we'd be there, whenever you need to talk, I called them. They never answered, never picked up, never called me back. I did have a couple who were there. One of my best friends. She lived in London at the time. She's still in England, but she's not in London anymore. But she was constantly there. She's like, I'll come if you need me. And then some of us, they don't get someone who texts thinking of you, but sometimes it is just nice, even now, even if you're not going through anything, somebody sends you a text, hey, thinking of you. That's nice. Someone to go for a walk with when our legs are wobbly. People who are going through cancer, they need to keep their strength up. They need to build their strength. They got to have that strength, especially if they're going through chemotherapy, or even radiation. And so their legs could be wobbly. They need somebody to help just hold them up. They can walk. They just need that little support. And then sometimes, yes, you can use a walker or a cane, but sometimes it's just nice having somebody else, just that human touch. And then some of them don't get a support team, as I was talking about in the beginning of this video. Some of us don't get a doctor that actually listens. This is important. If your doctor doesn't listen to you, find another doctor. Okay? So that you need a doctor who listens. It's not going to work if they don't. And hopefully you have the luxury to be able to find another doctor. I realize now that some people might not have that luxury to find another doctor for whatever reason, whether it's insurance, whether it's where they live or what. But if you can, find another doctor if they don't listen. Some of us don't get a backup income when we can't work. Yes, that's true. But also too, and the other one is the last one is some of us don't get financial support when everything starts collapsing. Interesting enough, my mother, her first diagnosis, in the middle of all that, she found out. I don't know if any of you remember when Bank of America bought out Fleetwood. A banking company in Maryland. Well, when they did, they promised the company, part of the deal was they wouldn't like lay off their people and, and all this other stuff. Well, what does Bank of America do? They lay off the people. So then that banking company ends up filing a class action lawsuit against Bank of America. And then my mom, the department they did, I think there was like 11 departments that in the whole company that did what she did, or what her department did. And hers was like the top department in the company. And they end up taking the top 2 departments and giving those people their job. And so even though they didn't know how to do it, and so when all this was going on, my mother was told they can either, they had to train the people. They could either move to Maryland and keep their job, or, if not, they had to train their replacement. Well, obviously, where we lived, my mom wasn't moving. And of course, she was going through cancer, so she definitely wasn't leaving her doctors. And they ended up actually, interesting. She was going to lose her job, I think, in April, but the people also weren't trained, so they backed it up to like July or something like that. And so after that, like, my mom lost her job, and then she had a hard time, even with her experience in the banking industry, like, because she had, this was like 2006. My mom had been in banking since like the 70s. And so, I mean, a lot of the stuff she forgot how to, a lot of the stuff that they didn't do anymore, like, she forgot how to do. Like, it was, my mom did her job very well because she knew a lot. And so I think it was like a year, she was out of work. And even my dad, to this day, my dad's like, I don't know how she got her bills paid. She was, he makes a joke, she was robbing Peter to pay Paul. Metaphorically, guys, metaphorically. But somehow she got the bills paid. Somehow she got her medical bills paid. We don't know, but she did she's really good with that. And then eventually, like, her old manager was working at another bank, found out my mom wasn't in a job, was going to get her a job, but then they end up freezing the position. But then later on, the manager ended up having an opening under her, like on her team that she hired my mom for, which worked out very well anyways. But I say all this in a sense, like, shit happens, and it happens at the most inconvenient time. And, it doesn't care what you're going through. And, you think about when people are going through this, it's not easy. And then, of course, the finances on top of everything, it's a lot. So it's not an easy journey to begin with. And so then if you don't have the support, or you don't have the, don't have the support with it, it makes it even more challenging. And sometimes having the support, sometimes it helps too, depending on what that support is. So that support can also be burdensome as well at times. And it can be burden. And I say that in a sense of, the next thing is like why some cancer patients stop giving updates. And so it's, I guess, burdensome because sometimes people just feel like they have to entertain or they have to, where you shouldn't expect that. Okay. And plus you shouldn't do that. Like, so what if, so what if you piss somebody off? This is about you. Okay. You going through this, say what you need, speak what you need. Okay. They're not going through it. You need to do what's best for you. Go back to my setting boundaries videos. So the other thing is why some cancer patients stop giving updates. It's not because they don't care. There are just a lot of reasons behind silence. One, a lot of people stop doing it for unsolicited advice. They didn't ask, but suddenly everyone has the solution. I've seen this on some of the other pages that I look through. People talk about that. I don't know. I get it, because sometimes when people talk about it, like, or say something, like, I'll ask them and then I'll try to say, hey, this worked for my mom, you should try it, or something, like I'll say something, or, because I'm like, that's what worked for us. But I mean, I also keep in mind, like, sometimes people don't want that. And I know that's something I need to keep in mind as well. If people want to hear it or not, because sometimes people just want to say it and then move on, say what they have to say and move on. But they don't want to have to manage other people's emotions. It's heavy to carry their fear, stress, and sadness too. Yes. Even as a caretaker, I did this. I did this. I remember telling one of my friends about my mom being sick, and she started crying. I was like, I can't do this. I can't deal with this. Like, I just, it's nice to know that people care enough that it gets them emotional or they feel sad. But at the same time, like, you don't want to have to deal with it either. Like, I didn't want to have to deal with it as a caretaker. I sure didn't want my mom to deal with it, because my mom never knew mine or my father's emotions and how we felt about it. We definitely kept that from her and dealt with that outside of what we were experiencing. Silence after update hurts. So when people don't check in after we open up, it stings. Yes, because it feels like when they don't care, or it's just more so like they just don't care, just like, so what? I know a lot of that, because I got a lot, even as a caretaker, like, I got a lot of that. My mom got a lot of that herself, but like, it took later on, I realized, like, sometimes it's just people just don't know what to say. People don't deal with us on an everyday basis, and so even as more frequent it has become with people having cancer, so then another part of me wonders, like, are we going to go to it's just people become immune to it because it's such a norm. Like, everybody knows somebody with cancer. Somehow everybody is affected by it. And so it's just like, oh, okay, you have cancer, and not realizing, I think sometimes people not realizing the weight of it because they truly haven't experienced it for themselves, whether themselves having it, or had to go or went through a cancer scare, or had someone really close to them that they love, that they would be a caretaker to that person or one of their caretakers. Like, sometimes I just, so I wonder how that's going to end up influencing people. So anyways, that'll be interesting. Not wanting the pity. No. We don't want to be seen as weak or have people feel sorry for us. No, we didn't want the pity. My mom, she just didn't want people to know because she didn't want the pity. And that's kind of the same thing as managing other people's emotions, because, someone pitying you is just like, it's not a choice you made. Like, it just happened and it's something you need to deal with. And, in a sense, like, we just wanted fighters around us, like people who are like, all right, they're in this fight with us, and let's go and get my mom in remission. And that's what we wanted. Each person's different. I mean, because trust me, they, as a caretaker, and even as my mom, who was a cancer patient, like, they go through enough in their own head. They have their own pity parties. Why me? Why does this happen? They even have survivor's guilt. My mom went through that as well. And so yeah, no pity. Repeating is exhausting. Telling our story over and over takes a toll. Yes, it does. Sometimes it's one of those you tell so much you forget who you've told. But sometimes my mom, like, she had such an amazing story because she was literally a walking miracle, that she felt if she could tell her story, like, and it would help somebody, she did. And if she, repeating it was fine. But, I guess, but updates that's a little different, because you're still getting to that end goal where, when you're there and like, oh yeah, this has happened, so you're repeating the story over, like, this is different. But updates, repeating it is fine. So I would definitely recommend maybe a caretaker having either like a group chat or something. Now that we have all this technology, we obviously didn't when my mom was going through this, but to make it easier, that the caretaker then can update everybody at once with, whatever the person, with whatever that person wants told or said, passed along. Or even if the caretaker has, like, even if you have that one person in the family that likes to tell everybody everything, have the caretaker tell that one person, and then let that one person tell everybody. Okay. Like, that's just, yes, that's probably the easiest way to do it. And it even takes some burden off the caretaker too. Too many questions. It can feel like an interrogation instead of a conversation. So yes, people sometimes fire off questions. I get it. There's a way to ask those questions and turn it into a conversation, versus just like an interrogation. Listen to what they have to say. Ask your questions based off of whatever they say, but just be careful. Protecting our peace and energy. So we have limited energy and need to save it for what truly matters. Yes, 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 yes. The energy needs to be there for one, they need that energy for their body to be able to, or their immune system to be able to fight what's going on. They also need that energy to do something for themselves. In other words, sometimes, like, if they like to meditate, if that helps them, they need that mental energy to meditate. If they like to go for walks because that's what helps them, they need that energy to be able to do that. So they need both the mental and physical energy to be able to do things that help them be able to fight better. Yeah. And I'm saying this to you who, if you have cancer, protect your peace and energy. Like, the setting is same thing, setting boundaries. Okay. If somebody's draining you, having people over, say no. If you don't want somebody over there, if you don't want to talk to somebody, say no. Like, it's okay. This is about you, not about them. If they get their feelings hurt, they need to deal with it themselves. Okay. I'm sorry. That's just how it is. When you're going through this, because this is all about you. All right. And then feeling watched, not supported. Sometimes it feels like people just want the details, not to help. Yes. We all have those people. that come around. They just want to know. They don't want to do anything, and they're just watching. And it's like they're waiting. It's like they're watching and waiting. Like they think they know what's going to happen, and they really don't. And they're just sitting there watching and waiting on you, to whether it's to get better. Hopefully, it's to get better, but they just want to watch and wait and see what happens. And yeah, don't be one of those people. And if those are those people, then don't tell them. Like, just say, oh, everything's fine, and leave it at that. And just don't answer the question. If they ask a question, say, why do you want to know? It's, I don't feel like talking about it. Change the subject. Even if you need to look up or get a book on how to not answer questions that people ask you, do that. They're out there. And so it's, do that. But yes. So definitely, it's getting to survivorship is a long, hard road. Thriving is a long, hard road. It's not a cakewalk. You need the support. You may or may not have it, but you need to find it. I should say, find where you can get support, whether it's with us, whether it's through like a Facebook group, a support group, I want to say stay away from AI in a sense, chat, but sometimes that might be your option depending on what's going on. But again, I would say where you get your cancer, there should be some kind of support group there. There's plenty of nonprofits. So even with your specific cancer, reach out to those nonprofits. A lot of them have, they have support groups or somebody they can team you up with to help. Because trust me, there's people out there that want to help. You have the American Cancer Society as well that just does overall cancer. So yes, again, don't do it alone. But wishing you the best on your journey. So, yes. Anyways, with that, go do something fun for yourself. Set boundaries. But yes, do something for you. And we will see you next week under the willow tree. Have a wonderful day.